It's confirmed Jodi Hildenbrandt's motivation was to get Ruby sequestered and into the bedroom. We're going to talk about it in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there. I'm right here. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, well, name's still Paul. Now, what we're going to be doing today is continuing our discussion of The House of My Mother by Shari Franke. Specifically, what we're going to talk about in this video is the dynamic of Ruby and Jodi's relationship. Okay, so I'll do a quick overview at the beginning for people who aren't familiar with the case and whatnot. We're reading this book in our members book club, so I've been talking about it like in the videos I post about there behind the scenes, but I wanted to start coming here on the main channel and talking about it because so many people have asked me to, number one, but number two, so many people are talking about it, so I want to continue the conversation over here. So this is going to be very candid. I do have some notes for this one because there's several things on this. At this point in the book, I'm like more than halfway through, and people are like, Paul, it gets even worse, right? So there's information we've confirmed and whatnot, right, just from the book, so I want to get into that. Now, what we'll do is we're going to go over a quick little overview if you are new to this case, okay? So we're talking about The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom. This is by Shari Franke. Shari Franke was the oldest daughter, the oldest sibling to Ruby and Kevin Franke. Ruby and Kevin Franke, especially Ruby, was known for her YouTube channel, 8 Passengers. So the 2 parents, the 6 kids, okay? So she started this channel. It quickly rose to like 2.5, 3 million, whatever subs it did. There's 2 narratives going on. There's growing up in a YouTube house and then growing up under this horrific stuff that, you know, these kids did with Ruby and then eventually Jodi. So speaking of Jodi, let's bring Jodi Hildenbrandt in. Jodi Hildenbrandt was a therapist that was brought into this scenario. She was well known in like LDS, Mormon circles, whatever, the church and whatnot. So she comes in and essentially starts to destroy this family. Now, if you've watched my other coverage, Ruby was warned by her daughter about this. I'm not trying to take the blame away from Ruby and Kevin. I know they want to say it was all Jodi's fault, but no, absolutely, they were completely warned about this. Nonetheless, this starts the joining of connections and Ruby, which will lead to horrible things being done to Ruby's kids, to the family, the whole 9 yards. This will result in Ruby and Jodi going to prison, which is where they sit. My personal opinion is they do not need to ever leave prison, okay, after what we've read in the book so far and the evidence that we saw of what they did to the kids. So they are sitting in there. We're still waiting to hear what the sentence is. It works a little different up there in Utah and whatnot. So we're still waiting on that. So that's the 60-second version. This video is not meant to be a deep dive into the case. I covered this when it was happening. This is supposed to be talking about specific aspects of the book. And so now what we're going to talk about is the relationship between Jodi and Ruby. Okay, so again, I made little notes here. This is going to be just very, you know, coffee and chat kind of vibe, right? At a certain point, Chad, this is one of Shari's younger brothers, is, you know, I'm not trying to blame him completely, but like, you know, he's doing behavioral stuff like that. They don't know what to do. So this is where Jodi Hildenbrandt's name comes in. She infiltrates the family, this, that, and the other. Well, at one point, Ruby's like, look, Jodi's not doing well. She's going to come stay with us. And Shari, she's going to need your bedroom. Now, Shari's kind of getting ready for college and doing all this kind of stuff. Remember, she's the oldest daughter. And so, you know, it's this whole thing of like, okay, she gives up her room for Jodi. And now already she had this, like, you know, she already has this relationship with Jodi, right? She does not like this woman. She had researched her, found out all this stuff about Jodi, went to her mom. Mom still allowed Jodi to infiltrate the family and do all this. So that was another video I did. So Jodi takes over her room. Well, slowly but surely, this begins to get creepy. And so one day, Shari is talking about like running up to her room for something. And when she goes in, she was like, the lights are off. It's candle lit. I smell massage oil, this, that, and the other. And she described it perfectly. She's like, it was like I saw something that I wasn't meant to. And it kind of clicked into place because one of the things that was going on is that, you know, a narrative that was told to the family was Ruby was like being attacked by evil spirits and stuff like that. Can I roll my damn eyes hard enough? And so Ruby was like going to Jodi's room throughout the evening and whatnot to help and everything. So you can only do the math. If you've watched this and seen how dramatic Jodi is, I can already see the narrative she spun trying to get Ruby into that room. Talking about, I've been possessed, baby. I need you to come fix me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, yeah, okay, great, okay. I can already see it playing out, y'all. It's not a pretty sight. Somebody bleached my mind, my mental image away. But nonetheless, it starts taking place. And at one point, Shari does say she sees her mom sneak out of the room in the middle of the night, hair tousled, grinning as if things are mischievous. Well, her mom and Jodi start spending more and more time in this room, right? And like, it's like they're holed up in this room constantly. And these rules start coming out where it's like, Kevin's not allowed to come up to the second, like to the upstairs. If Kevin leaves the house, he has to call to say he's coming back. And this is where it starts to, the whole concept of the control that Jodi will do to the men and the scenarios in these relationships, right? She has a way of wanting to sequester the female of the relationship away to get her. And so she'll do this by basically anything that the guy does is, you're evil, this is bad, you need to be in my men's group. Jodi has it on lockdown. She's able to get the women, get in their minds, convince them that your husband's this terrible thing. He needs to go to my men's group. I mean, Jodi's leading a men's group for all the men that she's victimizing and getting to their wives. Well, the men are stuck in the situation where the women are like, well, our family won't be whole again until you go to these groups and this, that, and the other. Some of them are like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. You know what I mean? Or they see it. Kevin went for the whole 9 yards. Okay, we'll get more into that in a little bit. So this is Jodi's MO. Now, Jodi specifically wanted, like, she had her eyes set on Ruby, is the way that Shari describes it. Now, you can kind of do the math on that, because if you follow me for this, you'll hear me say, like, I think they deserved each other. In a sense, this is what it is, because I think they each saw something they could get from one another, right? Like this beneficial type situation. And so they went after each other in that way. Even against all odds, against all the evidence that Ruby was presented of how evil Jodi was, she ignored it and used it to get close to Jodi with her connections and all this kind of a stuff, okay? And so that dynamic there alone is like, oh yeah, well then Jodi is probably seeing Ruby as like, you know, here's this, you know, blonde thing, she's got a couple of million followers, she's well known, I have access to her kids. There's this level to me that people like Jodi and Ruby need children around because they are vulnerable, they are dependent on the adult to take care of them. That's how it is, their kids. But they provide access to almost like the way that they got off on this abuse that they inflicted. Like they needed that. And so the perfect person was a weaker person. Well, a child, of course, is going to always be, for the most part, the weaker person compared to the parent. I think also Kevin was like that. She needed a punching bag. Kevin was great for that, right? He just let her do whatever she wanted to. He put on blinders. I don't care what you're doing to the kids. You know, this, that, and the other. So, you know, looking at it, you can see how this trajectory took place. There's also evidence that Shari found of like Ruby being frustrated that Jodi was a selfish lover and like that she gives and gives and like has to do so much to get something back out of Jodi. And I'm like, shocker, right? Is this a surprise to any of us? Horrifying mental imagery, but you know, shocker? Absolutely not. One of the huge things that Shari talks about that I'm just like, oh, I can't imagine if this was, you know, my own personal family, whatever. So imagine the scenario of, you know, you're growing up very religious, whatever, your mom has all these beliefs, all this stern, this and the other, you know, outwardly very anti-LGBT, all this type stuff, while the whole time she's now having this affair with not only, you know, a whatever you want to call it kind of a thing, but it's with Jodi of all people, right? And so she's just like, well, wait a second, mom says this outwardly, but behind closed doors she's like sleeping with Jodi in my room? I mean, literally, okay? Like, do the math on that, right? So it's the hypocrisy that you're just like, what? And that Shari mentions and whatnot. Okay, so then after that, this is where things get even like more bizarre, more twisted, more whatever. So at a certain point where Jodi is really going to go in and go in hard to get Ruby separated, and she starts in on Kevin with the, you're broken, you're this. So like there was the event of like Kevin noticed a good looking woman at the gym. Many of the men will say this, where they will get penalized for like noticing a good looking person. right? And that this will be used to be like, you're this horrible person, you're a predator, you're this or that or whatever. So then, obviously Jodi's living in the house. So then Jodi starts in on, I saw you hug your daughter and you enjoyed that more than you should. Like, you're horrible. Like, look at you. You should feel terrible for, that's sick, what you're doing. You need to leave. You need to be away. And this is where, and if you follow the case, she convinces Kevin that he has to go away, like move away or whatever. And Shari's recounting the story of Kevin calling her and being like, I'm going to leave for a year. I'm not going to talk to the other siblings. I'm going to talk through to you, and then they don't talk. And she's just sitting here like, because again, she has this information in her mind of like, Mom and Jodi are going at it, right? And so she's seeing this whole thing, and it's clear as day. But leading up to this point, she talks where Kevin just kind of, mindlessly walks around the house with blinders on to the obvious stuff that's taking place, and not doing anything or saying anything about it. And so that's the answer. And so when the public met this case, and it was like, well, Kevin was separated and he wasn't calling or talking, because remember, Ruby was putting all the rules forth of how the situation would operate. I can tell you a lot of those were probably coming from Jodi, but nonetheless it was Ruby. So like that, you can't contact the family, you can't do this, you have to go get an apartment, you have to keep paying for this. I mean, it was crazy, and Kevin just went along with it. And so I'm sure there's resentment, I would imagine, from the kids who are like, Dad's over here ignoring us, Mom has us at Jodi's house starving us out and beating us and doing this crazy stuff. I mean, that's where we met the case. So Shari is walking us through this entire build up to that, right? So those were some of the main points I wanted to go over with that dynamic. Was when we were watching this, so many people were like, I'm sorry, you cannot tell me that Jodi is not after Ruby and these other women. It just felt like grooming. It just felt like all that. And so to get this confirmation has been like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, we were right. You know what I mean? Like, we were right. We saw this coming from a mile away, and here we are at it. Now, it's my understanding that it gets even more turned up as the book goes on, so we will continue forth. But literally, like, this part right here, I got to a chapter, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I can't hold it back any longer. So I'm dying to know what you think down in the comment section below. I do appreciate you still watching. If you are still watching, well, go on, drop some sofas off in the comment section for Rosco and Spirit, the boys who are sleeping, and for all of us to hang out down there, talk about this case, all the other ones we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way down there to do that, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.